if you are consistent with adaptability in a variable environment, I reckon therefore you can achieve maybe a consistent outcome.
Welcome back to the channel, guys. Kerrod here today at Reigate Hill on this short game facility with one of the top short game coaches in the UK, if not the world, Alex Buckner. Alex, thanks for coming along.
Thank you very much for coming.
Today we're going to be talking about how to improve your short game, but in a way that you've never thought about before. Let's get stuck in. Often when we're working with players, right, and I do a fair amount of short game as well, and they'll come into the studio and they'll go, okay, like I feel like I can hit a good chip here or there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to doing it on the golf course, I really struggle.
Yeah.
Now, be it that is a combination of they're practicing in an ineffective manner.
Okay.
They're focusing on maybe concepts or ideas or positions that they shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the core of it, really what they're asking is they want to be more consistent.
Right.
They know they want to hit their better shot all the time.
Okay.
And a lot of them, and you'll probably hear this very often when you do exhibitions or teaching players of all levels, they go, I just need to work it out.
Yeah.
I just need to do it more around the green.
Mm.
And what would you say to a player, regardless of their skill level, that had the mindset like that?
So I think you summed it up perfectly when what environment are they doing it in that sense. Now, if you were to, let's say, hit a shot from a downhill slope to that top right hand side flag versus a long bump and run off this flat lie up to the top right, is it the same shot? Nowhere near, right? Is it therefore the same technique? Well, if you're flying it differently, no way. Are you therefore in a different body position? Probably. Do you have a different dynamic loft? Yeah. Would you change path? Maybe. Yeah. Would you hit off a different set of grooves? Possibly. Would you have a lie angle change? Yeah, probably. Would you have a different angle of attack? At the end of the day, it's different.
Yeah.
So when we say consistency, what are you on about? Now, a lot of people, I guess, come to, let's say, the short game area. People come to me and go, look, my short game's not very good. Needs to be better. All right. How? I'm not entirely sure. And that's normally the conversation. So end up doing like 30 minutes trying to figure it all out, trying to figure out where they can basically improve. And let's say a strike is poor. Where? Because it might be good on a certain lie with a certain flight because your, let's call it technique, suits that. I have a lot of people that say, right, well, I'm trying to get the club here, and I'm trying to get, hands here and do this on my arm and do that with it. Well, okay, why? What flight are you trying to do? Because that might be good if you want the ball to do a certain thing, and it might be horrendous if you want the ball to do another thing. But they'll continue trying to do that for both, and that's where it all gets a bit skew-whiffed in that sense.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So what I'm gathering from here is that the idea of having a stock ball position is really only necessary for a perfectly controlled environment where you're trying to achieve the exact same outcome, the exact same flight, and the exact same spin. But that never happens on the golf course.
Correct.
Ever.
Right.
So when we're looking at variability of that,
yeah,
then what are the comments there?
So let's think of this in an equation format. I guess as a coach, you look at things as maths figures and science and the rest of it like that. But if you're consistent in a variable environment, do you therefore have a consistent outcome? I'm not entirely sure you do. You're too consistent when things are variable. Yeah. So the missing link of all that is therefore adaptability. Yeah. If you are consistent with adaptability in a variable environment, I reckon therefore you can achieve maybe a consistent outcome. Right? So we've got to understand the fact that technique actually is a little bit more on a scale. Now, I like to think of a golf shot in like an equation format in a sense. So let's say the fact that you have a reed, you've got the lie, you've got the air, and you've got the green, and they have certain components that will basically affect how far the ball travels and maybe even the direction the ball travels. So let's say the green's firm, it's running from right to left or whatever that might be, and the lie is sitting up and it's in rough and it's wet. They're all making pace and direction problems, right? So the purpose of the flight is to counteract that, right? Now the purpose of the strike is to achieve the flight, right? Now if you need to make that flight change, because of them problems, you therefore need a different strike. If you're putting, you don't flight the ball that many different ways. So it makes sense to have a stock, and it makes sense to use the stock all the time. That's why you can be blocking and technique based. I think with a driver, you can be exactly the same. The ball's on a tee, you hit it the same. Ideally, I guess you might change it if you wanted to, but same dynamic loft, same club head speed.
For 99% of golfers, you try and keep it the same.
Right, okay. Unless you try and do something fancy with it. But again, it's very little. But regarding that around the green, the lie changes all the time, the read of all these different things, and therefore you want to flight it differently. So therefore you need a different strike. So this idea of stock and practicing a technique just doesn't work. What you want is almost for it to be like a scale. So you want to be like, right, well, in order to make the highest outcome, I need more of these factors. And to make it the lowest outcome, I need more of these factors. Now, there's nothing wrong with having the club shutting on the inside. People make it out like it's deaf, but it's a bit of a draw path with a less loft, and therefore the ball runs.
It's all relative to the shot,
and ball speed goes further. So it's all relative to the shot. If you're trying to do that to a short-sided flag, it's harder. So, people bash positions and all the rest of it like that. Again, it's the relevance of it all. I don't think there is a right or wrong, depending if there's relevance. So then it's a case of, right, well, how often do we practice being adaptable? How many times have you practiced being on your toes, being on your heels, being more over, being more stood upright, leaning a certain way? Well, at the end of the day, if the ball's above your feet, you probably are going to be more upright, right? And if you're more over, you probably are going to, ball below, you are going to be more over. How many times are you adapting your setup and knowing how to be in that position and still maintain strike?
I suppose the best example of this, which everyone to some degree who's a member of a golf club, right, or plays at a golf club regularly, would begin to understand when we talk about this concept right here, is if you learn this game later in life with an adult brain, we're very systematic and logical in the way that we go about it. And we try and find the instant gratification of the easiest way to do it that makes, let's say, organized sense in our head, right? So therefore, we like a routine. We like a structure to what we do. But if you were to ask who the best short game player in the club is, of any golf club, the first person that they'll probably say is that 10-year-old kid who's never had a short game lesson, has no idea about ball position.
Yep.
And the main reason being is the way that that kid is practicing is usually with his buddies, playing games. I used to do it all the time, I'm sure you did. Get your mate's ball, throw it into the lip as hard as you can. You've got to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So you're practicing variability from a very young age.
Correct.
And you pick up all the soft skills of awareness, of angle of attack, the effect of handle position, club face orientation, speed, what happens when you hit it on the toe, the center of the face, and the heel. And when it comes to the whole consistency concept, right? Just echoing what you say, we can see when you start to realize that if the best player in the club is not doing any of that, and they've never done that, and they don't even have an idea about that, and they're highly proficient around the greens, some would say as good as a professional, then why is short game taught the way it has been?
You say, I'm not entirely sure. So, if I'm teaching a technique to someone, I have to have a real reason. Well, why on earth am I doing that? Because it just works, that sort of thing. And I guess if you are completely missing the ball, if you are duffing the ball and you don't quite understand where a duff comes from, or the rest of it like that, then I guess it's different in that sense. But if you can physically strike it, but not quite understand how to adapt to certain situations, and all of a sudden it becomes a duff there, and then it becomes a duff over there, but then it's pure here, then I guess that's the problem. And I think the reason why a short game is taught like that way is because of putting, it's because of driving. Now the environments and the variability and all that, you say it's fine to have a technique, so you're only flighting it one way. So that's maybe the reason why I think we've gone down this road of teaching short game in the same way, because I don't think we know any different, and we don't ask maybe the right questions. When you start thinking about it properly, it doesn't make any sense. To your guy that, mucks around and plays all these different shots and adapts, it's the one that actually, challenges the most. But think about it, they are going from one end of the scale to the other and finding all the shots in between. The more you can basically move on the scale, the more adaptations you have. So therefore, number one, you can gain strike, but 2, you can therefore understand how to change flight relevant to the pace and direction problem from the read that you've gathered for the shot.
Yeah.
That's effectively all you have to do. The more you match that, the closer the ball goes.
And I think if you relate this to any part of golf, right? And let's excuse driving and putting out of this. The driving range really doesn't set players up for success if that is the first place that they're introduced to golf. And if you spend 2 minutes on Instagram, right, or YouTube, you'll see a lot of beautiful swings out there.
Yeah.
Now, most of those beautiful swings are on the range.
Yeah.
And we know that a player's swing on course is very different to what it looks like on the range.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of high-level ball strikers out there. And then you'll figure out what they're shooting. And you get this all the time, and I do as well, when you get swings submitted or people go, can you look at this? And, okay, so what's the outcome? Okay. What's happening here? Oh, I can't get it in the hole. I'm shooting like 89. And I'm looking at the action and I'm going, how is that even occurring? And you ask them the questions, you deep dive into their history, and then it reveals the answers of exactly what we're talking about here. They've been practicing in a static, controlled fashion without variability.
Okay, so think of it like putting. If you can roll a putt through a gate, how long do you spend on the gate?
Well, I would say most golfers, if they can roll a putt through the gate, they would probably do 1 or 2 or 3 because it's a round number and that's what they've been told, and then they'll move on.
Okay. But realistically, would you spend all day on it if you can roll it through the gate? No, because you can do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you roll that ball really nicely and miss every single putt on the golf course, do you go back to the gate?
Most players would, yeah.
That's the problem, though. That wasn't the problem. It's probably the pace and read, right? It'd be something, but it wouldn't have been that, because if you run the ball end over end, I would imagine you're rolling it okay. So don't go and work on your mechanics. Work on the factors that didn't put the ball in the hole, right? And it's the same for, again, this controlled environment thing. You know, it's like, well, the ball was on an upslope and it was a bit on a fly lie, and I hit my 9 iron and it went over there and it went OB. Go to the coach. What do you need to work on? I need to work on my backswing. No, figure out how to play the shot off an upslope, off that lie, and figure out how far it goes and what adaptation you need. Not fixing your backswing, because that had nothing to do with it. So, there's things like that, again, that can be taken into short game in that sense. I think it's easier as a short game coach to maybe get that, but because you've got the result there and you've got all the adaptations to your need in that sense. We could go on a downhill lie here, we can go over there, we can do all these things, and like you said, a driving range, it's quite hard to do that. But providing you see, let's say, a simulator as a controlled environment and leave it as a controlled environment, you can start using that as an idea of that's effectively me putting through a gate. I think if you treat it as that, then it's fine. If you treat it as more as that, then you're unfortunately fooling yourself. So, I've got this idea of basically a performance house that you build from the ground up, right? And the bottom part is basically, can you do something consistent? I guess that's the stock. I guess that's rolling the putt through the gate. I guess that's like hitting a 7 iron fairly straight, whatever that might be. But then after that, it's an adaptation, if you can. Now, if you can't even do any adaptations, your roof of your performance house goes basically right to the bottom, and you're effectively a bungalow. You're someone that can swing really nice and shoot millions because you're just striking the thing. You see, in the equation, you're worried about the strike, with no relevance to flight, with no relevance to pace and direction, with no relevance to read. You just hit the thing and then go and chase it.
It's so interesting because I explain the exact same concept in my teaching, but I use different vernacular, right?
Yeah.
You got performance house.
Yeah.
I call it a ceiling of potential and a range of consistency.
Fine.
Right? And a lot of players have quite a high ceiling for potential to shoot low scores, but their range of consistency from their worst shot to their best shot, right, is quite broad. Okay. And the objective in a lot of coaching is to tighten that up, right? And this here might get a little bit better, and that's where everyone has the rose-tinted glasses of, I can hit good shots occasionally, I just need to do that more consistent. Well, the reason you can't do it consistent is because of this range.
Yep.
And then even from that, the reason that you have this range is the evidence is probably based in your practice.
Yeah, and there's a lot to a golf shot, right?
So many variables.
There's a lot of variables. The problem is we don't work on enough of them. We work on one variable thinking it will fix many variables. So, for example, like, let's say in a chip shot, if you can strike the thing, that's fine. And if you can adapt to whatever you're on, that's fine. But let's say the fact that you land the ball in the place that you wanted to, but the ball then is 20 foot beyond the flag. We've done something wrong there. Now, it wasn't ball speed, because you've hit it hard enough to reach a land spot. It wasn't a strike, because you've achieved strike. So what is it? Well, was it the read on the idea you didn't understand the fact that what you landed on made the ball basically go away? Yeah. Or did you not understand the flight and spin that you needed to hit in order to make it land there and stop? Yeah. So, and then it's a case of, right, well, how often do you practice your reading of your lie? How often do you practice adapting to your lie? How often do you practice your reading of the green? How often do you practice your ball speed? How often do you practice flight control? How often do you practice spin?